And here we go. Welcome, everybody. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome all of you. My name is Rabbi Mark Fishman, and I would like to talk to you about why is it so hard to let go, letting go of our bad habits. This is the subject that I would like to speak about this evening, and this is our topic that we have for today. I have an enormous amount of material that I am ambitiously going to try and get through. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me at any point and ask your questions. Here I have put up, by way of an introduction, a classic passage from Maimonides, who says, how does a person change their life? Of course, the word he uses in Hebrew is teshuvah, and teshuvah has a terribly bad reputation for being mistranslated as repentance. If you ask 9 out of 10 people on the street, what is the word teshuvah? They all say repentance. And that's the best English word we have. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite capture the meaning and essence of teshuvah, because teshuvah means, from the root lashuv, literally to return. Lashuv, to return. Where are we returning to? Or to whom are we returning to? Those are all valid questions. But lashuv, to return, really means to return back to who we are, to return back to that essence that we have, that we are, that gets sullied, that gets dirted through the stresses and strains of life, through the ups and downs of life happening to us. And Maimonides says that among the various paths of teshuvah, they are as follows. A, constantly calling out before God, crying, entreating. Don't know how many of you have found yourself on your own, perhaps, just staring at a mirror or being in your bedroom and just screaming, crying out. I don't want my life to look like this. I want my life to be different. I want my life to be better. Screaming out, calling out, speaking to God, having that conversation. 2, B, to perform charity according to one's potential. Amazing. To give tzedakah, to perform acts of charity, as part of the path of teshuvah. C, to separate oneself far from the object of their sin. We have our best lives, and then we have the lives that we lead when we make mistakes, when we fool, when we just give in to temptation. Separate yourself as far as possible from that. D, to change one's name. This is radical, but believe it or not, to change one's name. As if to say, quote, I'm a different person. I'm not the same person as the one who sinned. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Don't call me Bob anymore. Call me Chaim, because I'm no longer Bob. Bob's the guy that was eating chocolate cake nonstop at the fridge at 11 o'clock at night. Call me Chaim. I'm the guy on a diet. I'm doing pretty well right now, thank you. And E, to change one's behavior in its entirety to the good and to the path of righteousness. Famous passage from Maimonides. We are going to, with this backdrop in mind, take a look at some classic Jewish thinkers. This is all by way of my introduction. Take a look at some classic Jewish thinkers and some modern secular theorists from the world of psychology and social theory. And through their guiding us, we are going to take a look at what the best of modern wisdom has to teach us, as well as what our tradition itself has to teach us in terms of how can we stop making the same mistakes over and over and over. How are we able to stop making the same mistakes? And with that in mind, let us jump right in. Question. This passage is taken from Joseph Hallinan, called Why We Make Mistakes, How We Look Without Seeing, Forget Things in Seconds, and I'm pretty sure we are way above average. If ever there was a great subtitle for a book, that has got to be the best subtitle you've ever heard. Again, Why We Make Mistakes, how we look without seeing, forget things in seconds, and are all pretty sure we are way above average. Take a look at what Joseph Hallinan says. Question: why do we keep making the same mistakes over and over? Answer: because we fail to identify the root cause of the mistake to begin with. A tendency researchers call misattribution. An example: washing your clothes. Say you get a stain on your shirt. You throw the shirt in the washing machine, add some detergent, and 45 minutes later, voila, the stain is still there. You cuss, you holler, you kick the washing machine, maybe you blame the detergent. But do you blame yourself? No, of course you don't blame yourself, but maybe you should. According to a recent study in the Wall Street Journal, most Americans, I'm sure this is true with Canadians as well, most Americans, 53%, don't use the recommended amount of detergent per wash load. Instead, they guess, usually filling the cap up to the top. That is a big mistake, and you thought you were coming here today to get rid of your big mistakes, right? Well, my friends, I'm hitting you with the heavy stuff right at the beginning. You want to go deep, real quick, real hard? This is your biggest mistake. You've been filling the cap of detergent all the way to the top. Why is that a big mistake? Because this is his writing. This was an international bestseller, this book. Because detergent overpouring, there's actually a term, detergent overpouring creates a high foamy tide inside the machine, lifting soil and lint above the water level so it isn't rinsed away. That leaves residue on clothing that fades colors and attracts more dirt. It's also bad for your washing machine. Inside the machine, detergent buildup encourages odor and bacteria growth and leads in time to wear and tear that will require professional attention. So why do we do this? Because we don't read instructions. And why don't we read instructions? Because we think we know better. Most of us, the article reports, have done so many loads of laundry in our lives that we consider ourselves to be laundry experts. And experts don't need no stinking instructions. That is one of the best passages of any book I have ever come across. And if you are just tuning in right now, yes, you are participating in a Torah class from Congregation Shah HaShamayim. It's me, Rabbi Fishman, and our class is Why Is It So Hard to Let Go? Why do we keep making the same mistakes over and over? And Joseph Hallinan is sharing really the great secret of all with us. Joseph Hallinan is saying, you want to know why you keep making mistakes? Because you assume that you can't make mistakes. You assume you're the expert. You assume it's the washing machine's fault. Maybe it's the detergent's fault. Maybe it's the dirty stain that was... But we would never question ourselves. And therein lies the root of the problem. To question ourselves. Take a look at the Talmud. Sota, page 3a. Rabbi is Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish, 3rd century generation, Amora, living in the land of Israel. He says the following. Reish Lakish Amar. Reish Lakish says, Ein Adam over avera ele imkein nechnas bo ruach shtut. A person only commits a transgression if a spirit of folly enters them. What does that mean? According to Reish Lakish, we're all sane. We're all rational. We are all individuals that are acting with the best of intentions and the best of circumstances. And yet, why do we make a mistake? It was a moment of insanity. It was a moment of madness. Why did you do that? I wasn't thinking. I don't know. I wasn't thinking. Reish Lakish teaches, and this is a deeply, deeply Jewish idea, that we all fall under and we all fall down when we're not concentrating, when we're letting things slip, when we're being too casual with our decision-making processes. And the only time we ever will make mistakes is when we allow ourselves to make mistakes. Fascinating idea. Because we ultimately are in charge. And anyone that will tell you, it wasn't my fault, you don't have my parents, you should see who my mother and father are, if only you would have an idea of my upbringing, you have no idea what the circumstances was, and when I was in my adolescent years, it went from bad to worse, my teenage years were a disaster, my early adult years, they didn't get much better, and now that I'm an adult, my parents are still driving me crazy. You don't have anyone that is starting off with the parents. It's not your parents' fault. It was my socioeconomic circumstances. We had it very difficult. We were poor. We were abundantly rich. I was spoiled. The nanny always said yes to me. It's not. If you're blaming your socioeconomic circumstance, you know what? It was my environment, the schools that I went to, the political parties that were in power at the time, the country that I was raised in, the friends that I kept, the genes that I have. I'm predisposed to chocolate cake. What can I tell you? I can't stop eating that. Whenever it's someone else's fault, what you're doing is shifting responsibility. And Reish Lakish says the only time you will make that mistake is when a spirit of silliness enters you. What that means is when you're not being cautious, when you're not being careful, when you're not being intentional. Are you with me? Is this resonating? So far, so good? Let me pause. Questions, comments. I've got an enormous amount of material. I'm not going to make the mistake of thinking I have to get through all of it, okay? That will be my learning lesson. I'm not going to necessarily get through the entire source sheet with you. Any questions or comments? None? Okay, we're going forwards. If at any point you want to say or interrupt, please do. Passage from the Talmud. Again, Kiddushin, Babylonian Talmud, page 40, Rav Huna. Amar Rav Huna. Kevan sha'ava adam avera, v'shana ba, hutra lo. Hutra lo so k'daitach, ela na'asit lo keheta. This is one of the greatest insights into human psychology. Rav Huna, from the Babylonian Talmud, all the way from Babylonia, is telling us something incredible. When a person transgresses and repeats his transgression, listen carefully, it is permitted to him. Let's just stop there. Talmud's going to amend this, but let's just stop there. Can you see my screen? Can you see it okay? I've enlarged it. Yes, it's good. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay. When a person transgresses and repeats his transgression, it's permitted to him. That sounds crazy to us. That sounds crazy. I'll give my favorite example, cheeseburgers. You're telling me, I know cheeseburgers, I'm supposed to cut them out. They're not good. And not only are they not good for my body, they're not good for my soul. Meat and milk mixed together, we don't eat cheeseburgers. No cheeseburgers, no meat and milk. But if I go to McDonald's and I have a cheeseburger, and then I repeat my transgression, and then the next day I take another cheeseburger, it's permitted to him? Have you ever heard of such a thing? Does that mean that Judaism now allows Mark Fishman to eat cheeseburgers? Of course not. Of course not. And the Talmud says, can it enter your mind that the transgression is permitted to him because he sinned twice? And the Talmud says, yes, you're right, you're right. We wanted to be provocative. We were just trying to get you up out of your seat and upset. Rather, what was the teaching of Rav Huna? It becomes as if it were permitted to him. And this is an incredible idea. This is an incredible idea. Have you ever had a scenario or situation in your life where there was a red line? There was a red line, whatever that red line might be. I'm not allowed to do this. I can't ever permit myself to do the following. X, Y, Z. You plug into your lived experience, your red line. And we all have different red lines. That's natural. That's normal. We're all different human beings. For some of you, it will be the worst sin imaginable, biting your nails. Can you imagine? I'm sure some of you might in your early years bit your nails. But whatever that worst terrible crime is, we all had our red lines. And then one day we crossed the line. And heaven didn't strike us down, and the sky didn't fall. And you know what we did the next day? We did it again. Do you know what happens to a human being's psychology if they cross one of their red lines that was an uncrossable line, and then they repeat that behavior? Very soon, it becomes something absolutely permissible. It's an amazing insight into human psychology. It's fascinating. Once you have committed something that you thought was untouchable, it suddenly becomes absolutely fine. It's no big deal. I do this all the time. Fascinating. Fascinating. And I want to go back now to the next passage. Look at the next passage. This is taken from Rav Dessler. Who is Rav Dessler? Rav Dessler is one of the leading rabbinic figures of the 20th century. Born in Eastern Europe, he will move as a teenager to England, where he will study at the Gateshead Yeshiva. Seen already in his teenage years as a child prodigy, he will eventually make his way to the land of Israel in pre-state Palestine and go on to be one of the leading figures, rabbis, and leaders of the Ponevezh Yeshiva, the largest yeshiva in Bnei Brak. Rav Dessler is an incredible thinker and writer. He didn't write books, he wrote letters to students, and they were collected and published posthumously under the title The Letters of Elijah, because his first name was Eliyahu, Elijah in translation. The Letters of Elijah, and in Hebrew, Michtav Me'Eliyahu. Michtav Me'Eliyahu, or the Letters of Elijah. And in English, it's a 6-volume English set. You can only imagine how much there is here. Listen to what he says. However, the majority of one's actions occur where there is absolutely no conflict between truth and falsehood. What's he talking about? To give you a drop of background, he's talking about where does a person's free will and struggle exist? When we are faced with eating the chocolate cake at 11 o'clock at night or not eating the chocolate cake at 11 o'clock at night, you'll excuse me for my example, where does that free will struggle take place? Look at what he says. This is a fundamental, fascinating idea. Since a person has been educated to act in many areas in accordance with the truth, when they do so, they are not exercising their free will, since they have no option to do otherwise. This is fascinating. Did you walk down the street today and violently mug somebody? No. Did you walk down the street today and start a fight and get into a physical fight with somebody? No. Why? Because it's outside of your realm of free choice to do that. It's a fascinating idea. It's outside the realm of your free choice to have walked down the street today and mugged somebody or violently attacked them. You know why? Because you've lived your life within the realm that violent crime is not something you could ever entertain. So you don't have the choice to do it. Similarly, he might make incorrect decisions based on falsehood and not realize that these are improper actions. Since he is so accustomed to doing them, they are now beyond the range of his free will. Let's say that you've been just brought up constantly doing one particular wrong pattern of behavior, and you had no idea to the otherwise effect that this was wrong. You've constantly been doing them. You are so accustomed to, that's not in your free range of will either. Listen to his point. This is a fascinating point. Decisions of free choice are limited to the meeting ground between the positive and negative forces within an individual. For example, many people might be negligent in speaking derogatorily about others, only because they are accustomed to it and are oblivious to its severity. The very same people, however, would never consider stealing or murder because their education has ingrained in them not to do so, to the extent that they have no inclination to do such things. He gives a famous example. Let me give you an analogy that Rav Dessler gives. This is not in the text, but he gives a famous example. He says two countries are going to war. I think his example was Russia and Germany, I think was his example. It doesn't matter the example, but two countries are going to war. He says, all the way back in Russia, you've got sitting in Moscow, the capital, the head of the army, the general, and he's making decisions. Is the battlefront taking place in Moscow? No. All the way back in Paris, in France, or did I say Germany? All the way in Berlin, you have the head of the German army sitting, making decisions in the war room. Is that battlefront taking place in Germany, in Berlin? No. Where does that battle take place? On the very line where the two troops meet one another. In that area where the troops of Russia and Germany will meet one another, that is the very place where the battle takes place. He says it's exactly the same, and it is true also for our internal battles over our freedom, our free will, and our free choice. When we are confronted with decisions that we are going to make to do the right thing or to do the wrong thing. None of us had an inclination today to violently attack somebody. Could you even contemplate it? It's outside of our realm of contemplation. None of us was stealing money from banks today. Why? Because we've been trained and acculturated that that's not who we are. We just would never rob a bank. But maybe negligently speaking derogatively about others? Okay, that happens on occasion. We know it's not the right thing to do. We might feel a part of us wanting to be better. We might sense that I really shouldn't be gossiping right now, but at the same time, it feels so good and I need to get it off my chest. It's in that area where the forces of wanting to do the right thing will clash and meet with wanting to do the wrong thing, that is the arena of where our free choice takes place, the battle of our free choice. Just as his analogy of the physical battle between two countries doesn't happen in the war room in their respective capitals, but rather it happens on the battlefield where the two sides meet. Every single time, and here's the point, and I want to stress this, every single time that you find yourself coming up against the desire to do the wrong thing, whatever that wrong thing might be. Now I'm looking out at my screen and I'm seeing just righteous individuals. I can't imagine any of you doing the wrong thing. Again, I can only imagine like biting your fingernails must be the worst crime any of you Sadiqim, any of you righteous people would ever do wrong. That's the worst crime I can imagine, biting your finger. But when you get the desire to do the wrong thing, you have entered into the point of free choice. Now you're on the cusp of that meeting point between the forces of good and the forces of evil, just as those two sides of the armies will face their battle at the battlefront. And that's where we exercise our ability to choose and make the right, hopefully, the right decisions. Okay, let's go on a little further. Here, I'm going to give you the greatest gift anyone has ever given you. And friends, I'm giving it to you on a silver platter. Oh my God, you should be thanking me for this. I'm giving you the greatest gift anyone has ever given you. It's titled The 5 Tips for Sticking to Your New Year's Resolution. What's coming up in 2 weeks' time, everybody? Shout it out. Rosh Hashanah. How do you translate Rosh Hashanah?
End of the year. New year.
New year. New year. Are any of you making a New Year's resolution? You should be. I say the phrase New Year's resolution. What do? You all think about December 31st, correct? New Year's resolution is not December 31st only. New Year's resolution is Rosh Hashanah. This is 2 weeks' time. I want to go through this with you. This is the greatest gift. If anyone after the class would like a copy of my source sheet, email me at rmf@theshah.org. I will put it in the chat bar. Okay? I'll put it in the chat bar. Email me and I will happily send you this source sheet because this is gold. There, I just put my email address. Email me. Don't write your email in the chat bar. I want you to take my email and I want you to send me an email. Okay, so let's take a look. Every New Year's Eve, people around the globe make resolutions. They tell themselves, I'm going to exercise more and organize my receipts every week and keep the kids away from the iPad. And then February arrives. Oh, February. Halavai, it should be February. And then the middle of January arrives. And the running shoes are deep in the closet. The receipts are in a pile. And the kids just reached level 134 on Angry Birds. You can tell how old this article is. Angry Birds? Who's playing Angry Birds on an iPad anymore? But this year can be different. When I was writing my book about the science of habit formation, the power of habit, why we do what we do in life and business, I asked neurologists, psychologists, and other researchers if there's a right way to create New Year's resolutions. Absolutely, they replied. Studies show that if you structure your resolutions in a scientific manner, they're much more likely to stick. Are you ready? Tip number 1, know your habit loop. This is so important. This is so important. The first step in understanding that every habit has 3 parts: a cue, a routine, a reward. I'll say that again: a cue, a routine, a reward. It's called the habit loop. Okay? What does that mean? What does that mean? Listen to what he said. For years, I had a habit of eating a chocolate chip cookie every afternoon. And so before New Year's rolled around, I made a resolution. I was only going to have half a chocolate. To stop eating cookies. The scientist said I needed to recognize that habits and my resolutions to change them exist within a larger pattern of behaviors. So to create a new habit, I needed to pay attention to my environment. Cues can be a specific time of day, a particular emotional state, or other triggers. And so I began paying close attention to my environment whenever I felt a cookie urge, and pretty quickly discovered it always occurred at around 3:30 in the afternoon. Time of day was the cue. Do any of you have any cues? Are you thinking of your own cues as I'm speaking? Okay. But simply identifying a cue isn't enough. The reason why habits are so powerful is because they deliver rewards. So to make my New Year's resolution stick, I had to identify the reward. Why was I eating a cookie every afternoon? To figure this out, I had to conduct experiments. One day, when the cookie urge struck, I bought a cup of coffee to see if what I really needed was a pick-me-up. The next day, I ate an apple to see if reducing hunger was the reward I craved. On day 3, I went for a walk. What I discovered was that the real reason I went to the cafeteria was because it offered an opportunity to see friends. The reward I was craving was socialization. Once I understood my cue, routine, and reward, the habit was easy to change. I resolved that every afternoon I would walk to a co-worker's desk to gossip rather than the cafeteria. Now, of course, gossip is not a great example here of giving a new expression because we want to move away from Lashon Hara. We want to move away from gossip as well. But I would give myself the reward I craved, socialization, but change the routine so it didn't include a cookie. Of course, simply selecting cues and rewards doesn't mean that change occurs effortlessly. The key is to figure out when your willpower is likely to flag and come up with a response ahead of time. Are you likely to start munching when you're stressed? Buy lots of fruit before the in-laws arrive. Is it hard to exercise before work? Put your running shoes by your bed so you'll see them first thing in the morning, etc., etc. And researchers have found that New Year's resolutions last longest when people write them down as a formula. And here's the formula. I am being so good to you. Look at this. When I see the Q, I will do a routine to get a reward. Are you following this? Q, routine, reward. This is the most important thing anyone will ever tell you in your life. I know that's a bold claim. I know that's a bold claim, but this is the keys to the palace of stopping the same patterns of behavior. Cue, routine, reward. Are you with me? Are you following? Okay. This, by the way, is from Charles Duhigg and his book, The Power of Habit. And he has an amazing passage in this book, The Power of Habit, where he says the following. I want to read this out with you. This is amazing. Look at what he says. Want to craft a new eating habit? By the way, let me stop here for a second. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna have a moment of vulnerability with you, my dear class. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have a moment of vulnerability with you. I'm gonna share something personal. Do you know what I did before the class started? I snuck a piece of chocolate. I had a bowl of chicken soup for dinner. We had leftover chicken soup, and I was fleishik, so I was meaty, and I couldn't have anything milchik. And in the snack bar, which we keep in the top cupboard because we don't want the kids to reach it, right? The only problem is that I can reach the top cupboard. So in the top cupboard, we keep the par of chocolate. And I don't mean like the cheap type of par of chocolate. I mean the really good, like the 70% cocoa, that type of par of chocolate. Like, I want to make this. Why am I telling? And I snuck some chocolate before I started the class. Okay, why am I telling you that? It's not because I'm a masochist and I'm trying to inflict humiliation upon myself in front of you. I'm sharing this with you because we're all in this together. Okay, if we're honest, and if we can take what Brené Brown calls the leap of vulnerability, then we will be able to help each other, support one another, and be honest with each other. And we're all in it together. I really believe that. I really believe that we're all in it together. And when I'm reading this out, I'm not reading something at you. You know what I'm doing? I'm learning together with you. Okay? That's what I'm doing. I'm learning together with you. So look, nothing's wrong with a little bit of dark chocolate. Nothing's wrong with it. Unfortunately, I've set myself a goal before Rosh Hashanah, and it doesn't include eating chocolate. So nothing's wrong per se with a little bit of dark chocolate. Now I'm going to have to go for a jog after this class. You see what's happening? Let's go further. Let's go further, okay? Because he shares something amazing. Look at this. Look at this. Want to craft a new eating habit? When researchers affiliated with the National Weight Control Registry, a project involving more than 6,000 people who have lost more than 30 pounds, most of the successful dieters also envisioned a specific reward for sticking with their diet. A bikini they wanted to wear, or the sense of pride they felt when they stepped on the scale each day, something they chose carefully and really wanted. They focused on the craving for that reward when temptations arose, cultivated the craving into a mild obsession. Isn't that fascinating language? They cultivated that craving into a mild obsession, and their cravings for that reward, researchers found, crowded out the temptation to drop the diet. And the craving drove the habit loop. In one group, 92% of people said they habitually exercised because it made them feel good. They grew to expect and crave the endorphins and other neurochemicals a workout provided. In another group, 67% of people said that working out gave them a sense of accomplishment. They had come to crave a regular sense of triumph from tracking their performances, and that self-reward was enough to make the physical activity into a habit. I am definitely going for a run after this. When I say definitely, I really hope I'm going for a run after. But countless studies have shown that a cue and a reward on their own aren't enough for a new habit to last. Now listen carefully, listen carefully. Only when your brain starts expecting the reward, craving the endorphins or sense of accomplishment, will it become automatic to lace up your jogging shoes each morning. The cue, in addition to triggering a routine, must also trigger a craving for the reward to come. I'll read that last line again because it's the essence of the entire passage. The cue, in addition to triggering a routine, must also trigger a craving for the reward to come. So each time I want to go running, it's not enough to just want to go running. I wake up in the morning, and what do I want to do? I want to go running. What do? I have a starchy, high-carb breakfast cereal, usually with sugar. You've got to keep that cue again and again and again until it creates a routine, and that routine must then trigger the craving for the reward. I really want to get on those scales and see what I'm going to. I want to fit into my suit. I want to fit into that bikini. I want to have that positive sense that my progress is going to give me. This is an incredible idea. Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. Such an important idea. Let's go a little further. We skip to Daniel Pink. He speaks of his book, When. That's just the title of his book, When, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. Listen to Daniel
Rabbi,
Pink.
if I can,
Yes.
sorry, can I just ask a question if it's a good time?
Yes, please. I want questions.
Okay. I absolutely, I really like the idea of, the cue, the
let's bring it
the,
on. Yeah.
and
The
fixing
routine,
a
the
reward,
reward.
and to therefore develop a habit. But you mentioned, having an kind of like a meta reward. So, fine, instead of eating that cookie, you go gossip to build that community or the connection. And for instance, if I understand correctly, the author would have us, if you do it for, let's say, 10 days, then you would get to buy yourself some sneakers, for instance.
Okay.
Right. It's an example. But
yes,
to me, I guess my question is that something realistic? Because in my mind, I'm always thinking, well, it's very artificial because I absolutely agree and will try to apply the cue reward kind of habit building mentality, but to have like that overarching reward seems, well, I can just buy it for myself right now. I don't need to wait. And I don't know, maybe other people felt differently.
Can. You absolutely can buy it for yourself right now, but you wouldn't have achieved the reward. You would be taking a shortcut to it.
Yeah.
And the point of the reward is that it's being earned. Yes, you can shortcut the system, but then you're cheating yourself because you're just giving yourself the instant gratification of the reward without having worked to its achievement. And when you go on that 10-day running cycle, I'm going to run every day for the next 10 days. I'm going to go on a jog. Let's start slowly. I'm going to go on a jog. You know what? Let's walk before. I'm going to walk every day for the next 10 days, and I'm going to reward myself on day 10 with a brand new pair of running sneakers. That fulfillment, just an example again, but that fulfillment of a brand new pair of running sneakers is your achievement. I am really proud of myself. I walked every day. And by allowing yourself not to shortcut the system, But to truly be honest with yourself and give yourself the reward when it is merited, that is the system that he's speaking about.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, let's go a little deeper. This is Daniel Pink. Don't break the chain. Jerry Seinfeld makes a habit of writing every day, not just the days when he feels inspired. Every single day. To maintain focus, he prints a calendar with all 365 days of the year. He marks off each day he writes with a big red X. After a few days, you'll have a chain, he told software developer Brad Isaac. Just keep at it and the chain will grow longer every day. You'll like seeing that chain, especially when you get a few weeks under your belt. Your only job next is not to break the chain. Imagine feeling the midpoint slump, but then looking up at that string of 30, 50, or 100 X's. You, like Seinfeld, will rise to the occasion. The incredible story and message of consistency, of doing something every single day. And actually, what do we do with our kids? We give them a behavioral chart. And so you can see here on the page, it's the behavioral chart. I was nice to my sister. That's definitely up there. I did not whine today. That's definitely up there. I made my bed. I kept my room tidy. I'm sure you know some adults who could use this chart as well. I was ready on time for school. I was helpful today. I did my chores. And what happens? You start ticking them off. Monday, done. Tuesday, done. Wednesday, done. Thursday, Friday. What happens? After a while, it becomes intuitive that what kid will make their bed before they leave the room. Did anyone here have a battle with your inner urges to brush your teeth this morning? I'm willing to bet none of you had a battle with your inner urges to brush your teeth. You know why? Because at a very early age, you were taught this is what you have to do every day. And you were forced to do it maybe at the beginning. And after a while, it was explained to you why it was important and of value and how it was for your benefit. And eventually, it became second nature, to the point where you might not even be thinking about doing it when you're doing it. You might be absent-mindedly brushing your teeth. I know I am. I absent-mindedly brush my teeth. Why? Because it's second nature. The power of habit becomes so powerful when it's repeated and repeated and repeated. And amazingly, this is wisdom our sages knew thousands of years ago. Again, we're looking at the Talmud, this time Psachim, page 50b. Amar Rav. Rav said, Leolam ya'asok adam b'Torah u'mitzvot, afa pi shelo lishma, shemetoch shelo lishma, ba lishma. A person should engage always in Torah study and the performance of good deeds, even if he's not doing it for their own sake. Because through the performance of mitzvot, not for the right reasons, one will eventually gain an understanding and come to perform them for their own sake. Now, this is quite deep, and this statement has a variety of ideas contained within it. But what I want to take from it is that sense of repetition. You don't feel like doing it. You're not in the mood to do it. You don't want to do it. Your heart's not in it. Keep doing it anyway. Because when you keep performing the act over and over and over, again and again, what will happen? It will become a part of you. It will become a part of you, maybe over a very long period of time. But eventually, it will become second nature. I want to read you a stunning passage, again from the book called Habit. Look at the following. A week later, Mandy had bitten her nails only 3 times and had used the competing response 7 times. She rewarded herself with a manicure, but kept using the note cards. After a month, the nail-biting habit was gone. The competing routines had become automatic. One habit had replaced another. It seems ridiculously simple, but once you're aware of how your habit works, once you recognize the cues and rewards, you're halfway to changing it. Nathan Arazin, one of the developers of habit reversal training, told me. It seems like it should be more complex. The truth is, the brain can be reprogrammed. You just have to be deliberate about it. Today, habit reversal therapy is used to treat verbal and physical tics, depression, smoking, gambling problems, anxiety, bedwetting, procrastination, obsessive compulsive disorders, and other behavioral problems. And its techniques lay bare one of the fundamental principles of habits. Often, we don't really understand the cravings driving our behaviors until we look for them. So you want to stop snacking at work? Is the reward you're seeking to satisfy your hunger, or is it to interrupt boredom? If you snack for a brief release, you can easily find another routine, such as taking a quick walk or giving yourself 3 minutes on the internet. That provides the same interruption without adding to your waistline. Amazing idea. Amazing idea. At the root of all change is understanding the cravings driving our behaviors. Why are we acting in the way we're acting? Is it that we're really hungry, or are we bored? Is it that we're really hungry, or are we stressed? Is it that we're really hungry, or we're just impatient and we're twiddling our thumbs until the next moment arrives? Do we need to live our lives standing at the door of the fridge? Do we need to live our lives constantly peering into the pantry? And if we can understand what's driving our cravings, then we'll be able to start changing our behaviors. I'm going to skip the next thing. The next thing is psychological insight of a psychologist. I want to skip that. Let's go next again into habit. Same book, Habit. Because for reasons they were just beginning to understand, that one small shift in Lisa's perception that day in Cairo, the conviction that she had to give up smoking to accomplish her goal, had touched off a series of changes that would ultimately radiate out to every part of her life. Over the next 6 months, she would replace smoking with jogging. And that, in turn, changed how she ate, worked, slept, saved money, scheduled her work days, planned for the future, and so on. She would start running half marathons, then a marathon, go back to school, buy a house, get engaged. It sounds almost comical. It wasn't the trip to Cairo that had caused the shift. Scientists were convinced. Or the divorce, or the desert trek. It was that Lisa had focused on changing just one habit, smoking at first. Everyone in the study had gone through a similar process. By focusing on one pattern, what is known as the keystone habit, Lisa had taught herself how to reprogram the other routines in her life as well. Wow, this is a stunning point he's making. You know what happens often in our lives? We look at wonderful people, or we look at ourselves and we bemoan the fact that we do A, we do B, we do C, we do D, and we say to ourselves, I want to be better. I want to be different. I want to be a greater person. And what happens? It is such a monumental challenge that to climb and scale Everest, impossible. So what happens? We give up. We give up. And then we're back to square one. But what happens when we make one key choice to make one change in our lives? In this last example we just read, smoking. The example to give up smoking. Researchers call this a keystone habit. It's a really significant one. Because one keystone habit is able to make many ramifications in other areas of our lives that create additional changes. What happens when you stop smoking? You start exercising more. And suddenly you get greater discipline in your life. And with greater discipline becomes a sense of, let me achieve my goals. And with achieving one's goals is you go back to school, you buy a house, you get engaged. Here was a person that dramatically changed their life around. How? Not by dramatically changing their life. That's the mistake we make. You don't dramatically change your life by dramatically changing your life. You dramatically change your life by making one small but significant change. And then you repeat it, and then you continue it. That's how you change your life. Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers. Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai says, Habiratz lemitzvah kala kibachamura, uboreach min ha'aveira, shemitzvah goreret mitzvah, va'aveira goreret aveira. Shescha mitzvah mitzvah, uscha aveira aveira. Ben Azai says, run to do an easy commandment as if to do a difficult one, and flee from sin, since one mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, and one sin leads to another sin. And since the reward for a commandment is another commandment, and the reward for a sin is another sin. This is such a fundamental piece of Jewish teaching. Do you know what happens every time you do a good deed? You create a positive cycle. And what is the reward for doing a good deed? Another good deed. The reward for a mitzvah is you get to perform another mitzvah. This is so powerful and so fundamental. Our behaviors are cyclical. Patterns appear in our lives. We are always in patterns. We have to choose, is it a vicious cycle of negative behavior, or is it a virtuous cycle of positive behavior? And the reward for a mitzvah is another mitzvah. Let's finish off. A pattern emerged. This is taken from the book Habit. Again, same book. A pattern emerged. Alcoholics who practiced the techniques of habit replacement, the data indicated, would often stay sober until there was a stressful event in their lives, at which point a certain number started drinking again, no matter how many new routines they had embraced. However, those alcoholics who believed, like John in Brooklyn, that some higher power had entered their lives were more likely to make it through the stressful periods with their sobriety intact. It wasn't God that mattered, the researchers figured out. It was belief itself that made a difference. Once people learned how to believe in something, that skill started spilling over to other parts of their lives until they started believing they could change. Belief was the ingredient that made a reworked habit loop into a permanent behavior. I wouldn't have said this a year ago. That's how fast our understanding is changing, said Tonigan, the University of New Mexico researcher. But belief seems critical. You don't have to believe in God, but you do need the capacity to believe that things will get better. Even if you give people better habits, it doesn't repair why they started drinking in the first place. Eventually, they'll have a bad day and no new routine is going to make everything seem okay. What can make a difference is believing that they can cope with that stress without alcohol. Okay, there is a variety of different approaches here. Let us finish with Maimonides, how we began. Who has reached complete teshuvah? Who has changed their life dramatically, totally, utterly? A person who confronts the same situation in which he sinned when he has the potential to commit that sin again, and nevertheless, he abstains and does not commit it because of his teshuvah alone, and not because of fear or a lack of strength. For example, a person engages in illicit sexual relations with a woman, and afterwards they meet in privacy in the same country, while his love for her and physical power still persisted. Person has an indiscretion with a woman, and later on is back in the same hotel room. He's still virile. He's still in his 20s. He still adores her. But nevertheless, he abstains and does not transgress. To be in that same situation and still feel those urges and overcome the urges. That's what it means to be a complete Baal Teshuvah, a complete person who has mastered changing around their life. It doesn't mean you don't have the urges anymore. Fascinating insight made by Maimonides, no less. You still have the urges. You still have the proclivity. You still have the desire. But because of the work that you've done on yourself, you're able to withstand that specific set of circumstances and not transgress. Friends, we have gone on a roller coaster of ideas over the last 55 minutes. I have given you so much information, hopefully positive, hopefully valuable, hopefully something that you'll be able to inculcate into your life. Again, for anybody that would like this source sheet, I put my email address into the chat. Email me and it'll be my pleasure to send you this. I will give it to you on a silver platter. We've looked at the power of habit. We've looked at why people make mistakes. We've looked at our sages. We've looked at the Talmud. We've looked at Pirkei Avot. We've looked at Maimonides. And there seems to be, fascinatingly, a cue, a reflex, a reward that becomes a habit. How can we become the people we want to become this Rosh Hashanah? In 2 weeks' time, when we hear the shofar, when we will be going through again another year, and we say to ourselves, why am I still the same person? Why am I still making the same mistakes? Why can I not let go? For the first time, maybe for the first time ever, we're starting to learn what are our cues, what drives our rewards, and what leads into habit. And if we can understand cues, rewards, habits, we'll, for the first time perhaps ever, start to change our lives and really and truly begin to lead the lives that we all want to lead, the lives that we all know we can lead. Thank you very much. Questions, comments, criticism? Yes. Anybody? Either I've stunned you in
It's been very
or you
interesting.
can't unmute. Sorry, David, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise from a thunderstorm, but it's been very interesting. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I hear no
Rabbi,
thunderstorm.
it was very enlightening, even though I was late because I couldn't connect. The link didn't work. Anyway, that was
You're
my
here.
problem.
You're here, and
Yeah.
that's you made it. You made it. Okay. Okay, good. Friends, if you, either you're masochists or you're gluttons for punishment, I don't know what it is, but we have 2 more classes on these similar themes. Okay? We have 2 more classes on these similar themes. Next week is going to be called Letting Go of Our Bad Habits. Okay? Letting
Are
go
you
of
going to
bad
send
habits.
the link for that, Rabbi?
Yes. The link will be sent both a
Yeah,
few days
I didn't
before
get
the
a link
class
this morning
and the link will be sent a few days before the class and 1 day before the class.
One day
I
before.
didn't. I didn't get a link.
The
I had
links will
trouble.
all be sent through Layla. We have a new administrative assistant in the office. Her name is Layla. If you did get the link, then you received it and you were here, and I'm
I
appreciative
did
for that.
not get that.
If
link.
you did not, then you can all reach out to Layla. Going to do something terrible now and give you Layla's email address. Layla is
Will it
Rabbi
be the
Shaya
same
and
link?
my assistant.
Will it be the same link this week? And eventually I got it
Yes.
with trouble, but I got it.
Yes, it's always the same link. Always the
The
same link.
same link. So I'll put it into saved, and
Okay,
I'll have
good.
it.
Okay, good. I hope that was beneficial. If anyone would like to reach out to me privately, b'simcha, my absolute pleasure. I will wish you all a great day. It's lovely to see your faces. Now comes the hard work, okay? Now comes the challenge. Now comes the habit forming. 2 weeks till your Rosh Hashanah, we can do it. Okay? And we're going to do it together.
Toda
Okay.
Rabba.
Thank you very much,
Laila
Rabbi.
Tov, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Have a great day. Be well, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.